My name is Sarah. I'm a 47-year-old nurse, and on the morning of June 11th, 2018, I died. I wasn't just close to death. I was gone. For 12 minutes, my brain had no oxygen. My heart was still. According to every medical textbook I spent years studying, I should not be here. But I am. I am here because I was sent back. I was sent back with a message from Jesus Christ himself. And what he showed me, the warning he gave me for the world, it wasn't about the things you might expect. It wasn't about politics or the end of days in the way we imagine it. It was about something much quieter, much more personal. It was about a secret that millions of people keep, a secret they think is only their own. A secret the enemy uses to build a prison of shame around their souls. And his warning, it should terrify all of us. Before that day, my life was normal. That's the only word for it. I lived in a modest house with a garden I was proud of. I worked 12-hour shifts at the local hospital, a job I loved because it felt useful. My hands could bring comfort, my knowledge could bring calm. My husband, Mark, is a good man. A solid man. We had 2 kids, both grown and starting their own lives. We were paying the mortgage, planning a vacation, worrying about the weird noise the car was making. Life was a collection of ordinary days, strung together like beads on a string. But underneath that ordinary surface, I carried a secret. A heavy, lonely blanket I had wrapped around myself since I was a teenager. I was a Christian. I loved God. I believed in His grace. But I felt like a fraud, a hypocrite, every single day of my life. My secret was a deep, abiding shame tied to my own body. It was the shame of masturbation. It feels strange and deeply vulnerable to say that word out loud now, but for decades, it was a silent scream inside me. It was a cycle I couldn't break. A moment of private release, followed by a tidal wave of self-loathing. I would pray for forgiveness, promising God I would be better, stronger. I would feel clean for a day, a week, maybe even a month. But the weakness would return, the loneliness would creep in, and the cycle would begin again. And with every turn of that wheel, the enemy's voice grew louder in my heart. You are unclean, it would whisper. You are a hypocrite. How can you face God? How can your husband even look at you if he knew the real you? This shame was a poison. It made me feel disconnected, even from Mark. I would pull away from his touch, not because I didn't love him, but because I felt so profoundly unworthy of it. My secret sin, as I called it, made me feel perpetually dirty. The night before I died, Mark and I had a small, stupid argument. It was about something trivial, I think who was supposed to take out the recycling. But it escalated. I was tired from a long shift, and the familiar feelings of inadequacy were bubbling just below the surface. He reached for my hand, trying to bridge the gap, and I flinched. I pulled my hand away. The hurt in his eyes was immediate. What is it, Sarah? What is always so wrong? He asked, his voice quiet. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't say, I feel like garbage because of something I did while you were asleep next to me, so I said nothing. I just turned over and faced the wall. The silence between us was cold and heavy. I had no idea that in just a few hours, the memory of the hurt on his face would come back to haunt me from the other side of life itself. I had no idea it would be my last regret. The next morning, I was at work. It was a busy shift in the cardiac unit. The air smelled of antiseptic and floor polish, a smell so familiar it was like a second home. I was in the break room, charting. My pen was scratching across the paper, the coffee next to me was lukewarm. My friend, another nurse named Linda, was telling a story about her son's soccer game. I remember laughing at something she said. And then it happened. It started with a sound, a strange, internal pop behind my right eye. It wasn't loud, but it felt immense. Instantly, a pain unlike anything I have ever known erupted in my skull. It was not a headache. It was a blinding, searing, white-hot explosion. It felt like my brain was being ripped apart. I must have made a sound, because Linda stopped talking. Sarah? Are you okay? I tried to answer her, but my tongue felt thick and useless. My vision swam. The edges of the room turned dark, tunneling in. The smell of antiseptic vanished, replaced by a strange, metallic scent, like old pennies. I felt my body go limp. The pen slipped from my fingers and clattered on the floor. My last conscious thought on this earth was not of God. It was not a prayer. It was the image of my husband's face from the night before, that look of confusion and hurt. "I'm sorry, Mark." The thought was clear and sharp in the chaos of my dying brain. And then everything went black. Everything went quiet. There was no pain. The searing agony in my head was just gone. I felt a sensation of lightness, of release. It was like I had been carrying a 100-pound weight my entire life, and it had suddenly been lifted. I felt a gentle, upward pull. Then I could see again. But the perspective was all wrong. I was up high, near the ceiling tiles, looking down. I saw the break room. I saw the half-empty coffee cups, the scattered charts. I saw my friend Linda, her face a mask of horror, screaming my name. And I saw my own body. It was slumped in the chair, head lolled to one side, an unnatural stillness about it. Me. That was me. But it didn't feel like me anymore. It looked like a doll I had left behind. There was no fear. There was no panic. There was only a profound sense of calm, a detached curiosity. The doors burst open. Doctors and nurses I had worked with for years poured into the room. They pulled my body from the chair and laid it on the floor. They started CPR. I could see their mouths moving, shouting medical terms, but I couldn't hear a thing. It was like watching a silent movie. I felt a pang, but it wasn't for myself. It was for them. I felt such a deep sadness for their frantic efforts, for the fear etched on their faces. They were fighting so hard for a body that I was no longer in. My heart, or whatever was my heart in that state, went out to them. They were so beautiful in their desperation, in their love. As I watched them work, a change began to happen. The edges of the room, the scene below me, started to blur. The colors began to run together. It was like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The sharp lines of the furniture, the distinct faces of my friends, all of it started to soften and fade into a gentle grayness. I was not afraid. I knew, with a certainty that came from outside myself, that I was leaving. The physical world was becoming a dream I couldn't hold on to. The grayness turned into a soft, comforting darkness. It wasn't a scary dark, not an empty void. It was a velvety, peaceful blackness, like the deepest part of the night in the countryside, far from any city lights. I felt held in that darkness. Safe. Then, far in the distance, I saw a point of light. It was tiny at first, like a single star. But it began to grow, expanding slowly, warmly. It wasn't a harsh, clinical light like the one in the hospital. This light was alive. It was golden and warm, and it seemed to hum with a silent melody. The light grew until it enveloped me completely. I wasn't looking at the light anymore, I was in it. And the feeling, there are no words in the English language to describe the feeling. It was peace, but a peace so profound it made every moment of calm I had ever felt on earth feel like a raging storm. It was love, but a love so pure, so unconditional, it made human love seem like a faint echo. I felt known. Completely and utterly known. Every secret thought, every hidden shame, every single moment of my life was laid bare in that light, and it didn't matter. I was accepted. I was cherished. I was home. The light slowly coalesced, and I found myself standing in a garden. The grass was a shade of green so vibrant it seemed to breathe. The leaves on the trees glowed with their own internal luminescence. The air was clean and sweet. And then I saw him. He was standing by a simple stone well. He wasn't what the paintings had shown me. There was no long, flowing white robe, no ethereal halo. He looked like a man. Strong, simple. He wore a plain, woven tunic. He looked like a carpenter, like someone whose hands knew work. But it was his eyes. His eyes held the light of 1,000 galaxies. They were filled with a kindness so deep it was heartbreaking. When he looked at me, I felt the gaze of all of creation, of all of time, and it was a gaze of pure, undiluted love. I didn't need to be told who he was. My soul knew him. My very essence recognized its creator. It was Jesus. I stood frozen, unable to move. Every ounce of my earthly shame, the heavy blanket I had carried for so long, came crashing down on me in his presence. I felt so small, so dirty, so unworthy to be standing in this perfect place before this perfect being. He smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. And then he spoke. He didn't speak with his mouth. The words bloomed inside my mind, clear as a bell, warm as the light all around us. Welcome, little one. Be at peace. That was all it took. The dam of a lifetime broke. I fell to my knees on that living grass, and I began to weep. But these were not tears of sadness or shame. They were tears of relief. Tears of a lost child who has finally found her way home. All the lies, all the self-hatred, all the years I had spent feeling like a fraud, it all washed away in the flood of my tears and the warmth of his presence. I knelt there for what felt like an eternity, just weeping, and he simply waited, his loving gaze never leaving me. He let me pour out all the poison until there was nothing left. When my sobs finally subsided, he walked toward me. He knelt down in front of me, bringing himself to my level. "You are so loved, Sarah," he said, the words echoing in the core of my being. Then his expression grew serious, though no less loving. A deep sadness entered his eyes. "There is something I need to show you." He didn't touch me, but the garden around us seemed to dissolve. Suddenly, we were standing in a space that was neither light nor dark, and images began to form all around us, like a movie projected onto the fabric of eternity. The first thing he showed me was my own life. I saw myself as a 13-year-old girl, alone in my bedroom, crying into my pillow after the first time I had touched myself. The shame was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my small shoulders. I saw myself begging a God I imagined was angry and disgusted with me for forgiveness. And standing in the corner of that memory, unseen by my younger self, was Jesus. His face was not angry. It was filled with a profound sorrow. He wasn't looking at me with judgment. He was looking at me with heartbreak. He was grieving for me, for the lie I had just started to believe about myself. He showed me another scene. Me and Mark newly married. He showed me a moment after we had been intimate, a beautiful moment, but my mind was already turning on itself. The old shame was whispering, comparing, telling me I wasn't enough, that I was somehow broken. I saw myself pull away from my husband's embrace, creating a tiny emotional distance that would grow into a chasm over the years. He showed me myself in church, singing hymns, my hands raised. But he also showed me what was happening inside my spirit. My prayers were hitting a ceiling of glass, a barrier I had built myself out of my own sense of unworthiness. I was performing for God, not connecting with Him. Seeing my life through His eyes was devastating, but not because He was shaming me. It was devastating because I finally understood how much He loved me and how much pain my self-imposed prison had caused Him. He had been there all along, His arms open, and I had been hiding in a closet, convinced I was too dirty to come out. Then the vision shifted. It expanded. I was no longer seeing just my own life. I was seeing the whole world. I saw millions of people, men and women, young and old, from every nation, every walk of life. They were in their bedrooms, their offices, their cars. They were alone. And I saw them engaging in the same secret act I had. But the vision wasn't focused on the act itself. It was focused on what happened immediately after. From the shadows in every room, a figure emerged. It was not a monster with horns and a pitchfork. It was subtle, shadowy, and its presence was one of cold, intelligent malice. It was the enemy, the thief. And he didn't roar or condemn. He would wait until the moment of physical release had passed, and then he would gently, almost lovingly, place a veil over the person's face. The veil was dark, sticky, like it was woven from shadows and tar. And as he placed it, he would whisper. The whispers were lies, tailored to each person's insecurities. "You see? You are weak. You are alone in this. God is so disappointed in you right now. You can't pray. Not now. You have to wait until you feel clean again. If anyone knew, they would be disgusted. You are a fraud. This is your dirty little secret. It separates you from everyone else." And I watched in horror as millions of people, my brothers and sisters, believed him. I saw them pull the veils tighter, accepting the shame as their own. I saw teenagers who believed their natural, God-given desires were a sign of their own depravity. I saw married men and women creating secret, shameful worlds inside their own minds, worlds that built walls between them and their spouses. I saw pastors, priests, and devout churchgoers who lived in a quiet terror of being exposed, their public faith a mask for their private despair. The veils grew thicker over time, layered with years of secrecy. They became heavy, suffocating blankets. People were walking through their lives, interacting with their families, going to work, but they were peering out through these tiny, darkened holes in their prisons of shame. They felt utterly and completely alone, not realizing that the person standing right next to them was suffocating under the very same blanket. My heart broke. I began to sob again, this time for them. For the world. Jesus let me watch until I couldn't bear it anymore. Then, the vision faded, and we were back in the garden. He looked at me, his eyes burning with a holy grief and a divine anger directed at the thief. Do you see, Sarah? His voice bloomed in my soul. The thief does not care about the weakness of the flesh. That is merely the bait in his trap. He feasts on the shame of the spirit. He offers a fleeting, counterfeit intimacy with oneself to purchase a lifetime of separation from me. He has convinced my children that my love is conditional, that my grace has limits, and that this one secret act is the special condition that nullifies my sacrifice. He gestured back toward the memory of the world I had just seen. He has built a prison of silence, where each person believes they are the sole inmate. They try to scrub themselves clean before they come to me, not understanding that I am the only one who can make them clean. They hide from the very physician who holds the cure. Tears were streaming down his face now. The tears of God. It was the most terrible and beautiful thing I have ever witnessed. I did not die on a cross so that my children would live in hiding from me. I died to shatter the veil. But the enemy has tricked them into weaving new ones for themselves. He looked directly into my soul, and I felt the weight of his next words, the divine command. You must tell them. This is not a license to indulge the flesh. It is a release from the prison of shame. It is a call to honesty. You must tell them to bring their secrets into my light. Not with pride, not with defiance, but with a humble, broken heart. Tell them the shame is the chain, not the weakness. I came to break chains. Their smallest, most whispered prayer for freedom, for honesty, shakes the foundations of his prison. He cannot stand against a soul that walks in the light. The weight of his words, the mission he was giving me, settled into my spirit. But with it came a dreadful realization. He was talking about me going back. No, I whispered, the first word I had spoken aloud. No, please. I want to stay here. With you. The thought of returning to that world of heavy blankets and silent suffering was unbearable. The thought of leaving this place, this perfect peace, this overwhelming love, was an agony beyond description. This is my home, I pleaded, tears of a new kind of grief starting to fall. Please don't make me go back. He looked at me, his compassion absolute. He understood. Your work is not done, little one, he said gently, refusing my plea. Your husband needs you. Your friends need you. They need to hear what you have seen. He placed a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't a physical hand, but I felt it. It was a touch of pure light and love that sent a shockwave of strength and comfort through my entire being. You must go back and be a light. Tell them the truth about the thief's lies. Tell them the truth about my love. He leaned in, his face close to mine. And know this, he said, his voice filled with a solemn promise. I will never leave you. I will be with you. You will not be alone in this. Not for one moment. He gave me a gentle push. And I was falling. The garden, the light, his face, it all vanished in an instant. I was tumbling backward through that peaceful darkness, away from home, away from him. The return to my body was the single most violent and painful experience of my existence. It was not a gentle awakening. It was a collision. I slammed back into my physical form with a jolt that felt like being hit by a train. The first sensation was pain. The phantom agony from the aneurysm was gone, but now every cell in my body screamed. The defibrillator paddles had burned my chest. My ribs were bruised from the CPR. Then came the air. My first breath was fire. It burned down my throat and into lungs that felt like they had turned to stone. I coughed, a deep, ragged, agonizing gasp for life. The sensory overload was torture. The fluorescent lights of the hospital room were like daggers in my eyes. The frantic beeping of the monitors, the shouted voices of my colleagues, it was a cacophony of noise crashing in on the perfect silence I had just left. And worst of all was the grief. A profound, soul-deep homesickness washed over me. I had been torn from paradise and thrown back into a broken world. I started to cry, but these were the hot, salty tears of earthly sorrow. I was grieving for the garden. I was grieving for his presence. I opened my eyes. Faces I knew were hovering over me, a mixture of shock, relief, and utter disbelief on their faces. "She's back," someone whispered. "Oh my God, she's back." The weeks that followed were a blur of tests and questions. My neurologist was a brilliant man, one of the best in the state. He looked at my charts, at my brain scans, and he just kept shaking his head. "Sarah," he said to me one afternoon, his voice filled with a professional bafflement that bordered on awe, "you had a massive subarachnoid hemorrhage. You were down, clinically dead, for 12 minutes. There was no oxygen going to your brain for 12 minutes. He held up a brain scan. It was my brain. And it was perfect. "There should be catastrophic damage," he said, tapping the film. "You should be, at best, in a vegetative state. At worst, well, but you're not. Your cognitive function is perfect. Your memory is intact. There is no damage. None." He looked at me, a man of science struggling for words. "I have no medical explanation for this," he admitted. "It's impossible. It's a miracle." I knew it was. But the physical healing, as miraculous as it was nothing compared to the spiritual healing. The heavy, lonely blanket was gone. The shame that had been my constant companion since puberty had been vaporized in the light of his love. The whispers of the enemy had no power over me anymore, because I had seen his face and heard his voice. The first person I told everything to was Mark. He sat by my hospital bed, his face etched with worry and relief. I took his hand, and this time, I didn't flinch. I held it tight. And I told him. I told him about my secret life, the shame I had carried for 30 years. I confessed the hypocrisy I felt, the unworthiness that made me pull away from him. I told him everything. He listened, his eyes filling with tears. Not tears of judgment or disgust. Tears of sadness for all the years I had suffered in silence, right next to him. When I was done, he squeezed my hand. "Oh, Sarah," he whispered. "I love you. All of you. I always have." In that moment, a new level of honesty and intimacy was born in our marriage. The wall I had built brick by brick with my shame came tumbling down. And then I told him where I had been. I told him about the light, the garden, and the man I met there. I told him about the vision and the message I was sent back to share. My life is different now. It has to be. The ordinary days are no longer just ordinary. They're infused with a divine purpose. The fear of death is gone, replaced by a quiet longing to one day return home for good. My prayers are no longer muffled. They are conversations. So I'm telling you now what he told me. I'm telling you if you are living under that same heavy blanket of shame. If you have a secret that you believe makes you unworthy of God's love, he sees you. He is not looking at you with anger or disgust. His heart is breaking for you because he sees you suffering in a prison when he holds the key. This message is not a license. It's not an excuse to live carelessly. It is an invitation out of hiding. The enemy's greatest weapon is your silence. Your belief that you are uniquely broken and alone. So I'm asking you right now to do something brave. When this is over, find a quiet place. And for the first time, maybe ever, speak the truth to God. Don't perform. Don't bargain. Just be honest. Tell him about the secret. Tell him about the shame. Bring your darkness, your weakness, your whole messy self into his light. He is not waiting with a gavel. He is waiting with open arms. He already knows everything. He just wants you to stop hiding. Stop letting the thief use your secrets to steal your relationship with the Father who made you, who loves you, and who is waiting right now to set you free. Heaven is real. Jesus is real. And his love is the most real thing there is.